Fossils are found everywhere on Earth. In most places, all that's left behind are traces of bones or shells. But in the high mountain deserts of southwestern Wyoming lie some of the most perfectly preserved remains of ancient life. Frozen moments in time. Fossils tell stories of life that refuse to disappear. Traces of their existence lingers on long after the world has changed around them. This is the story of fossil hunters who search for treasure like the gold miners of the Old West. They endure extreme weather and treacherous slopes in the hopes of a major discovery and a big payday.
Oh my God! Cha-ching! Cha-ching!
There is a scientific side to the story of fossils, but there is also a human side.
I've studied fossils all around the world for my entire career, and I still maintain that Wyoming is the best place on planet Earth to look at the fossil record of our planet. I encountered people that for many years and sometimes generations have been commercially collecting fossil fish and selling them around the world.
There's millions of years of fossils in there, but trying to find a good one and splitting the right layers is what we do.
I like fossils. I chose fossils. It's not a lucrative career. It's hard, but it's rewarding. Another one in the bag.
The people that do this for a living, the commercial enterprise, they understand what they're seeing. They know the layers. All know these rocks better than I do.
They live in campers. They're nomadic, gritty people, good people, I think.
But there is a controversy about the sale of fossils privately. They should be the public trust. They shouldn't be subject to general ownership.
Some people say that we don't know exactly what we're doing. We don't have any formal education, but we actually do care about the scientific value that goes into the specimen that we pull on the ground. We want to know this information. This is our love. This is our passion.
All the stuff that's in that book came from people like me digging it out of the ground. And America's just about the last country where fossils are still a free enterprise.
The United States is one of the few jurisdictions where it's legal to collect and export fossils.
They've been trying to put a stop to all that, and we, as a group, have been fighting back.
Literally, millions have been excavated. As a result of those millions being excavated, the much less common things are found.
I tell people I wish I'd have got into the business of selling feathers instead of rocks. My knees are shot. I worry about the dust. The elements are brutal. I can't quit. I don't know what else to do, really. I wouldn't know how.
Major funding for this program was provided by a memorial gift honoring Betty Buckingham Barrell, Ph.D., and her passion for the natural world and science education. The Wyoming Humanities Council, helping Wyoming take a closer look at life through the humanities. The Wyoming Cultural Trust Fund, Because Culture Matters, a program of the Wyoming Department of State Parks and Cultural Resources. A generous gift from MAS Revocable Trust. And the Wyoming Public Television Endowment.
I ended up with the perfect summer job for someone like me. I'm the paleontology intern here for the summer at Fossil Butte National Monument. We have one active quarry here on the monument. It's our research quarry. It's not a very big quarry. My days up here at the research quarry are probably my favorite. First of all, just because I get to be outside all day, I get to hike up here, it's a beautiful view, and then I get to start finding these fish that no one has ever seen, and I get to collect the data, and the data is publicly available, so it's really, really exciting to be able to be just a part of the whole process.
We started collecting here in 1997. We've been working this down since 1997. That's a long time. So the last couple years, we've had our staff work in the quarry, and then they are working 2 days a week, all day long, even if visitors aren't present, to try to move this process along.
People can just walk up and take the trail up to come see what I'm doing up here. Luckily, it's like a perfect mix of getting work done and talking to people.
Fossil Butte National Monument is a small monument, 8,198 acres, in southwest Wyoming. We are established for the geology and paleontology of this area. What's behind me right here is what we're supposed to do, is get them out there for the public. It's National Park Service land, so it's public land.
Of course, out of this quarry, we're only getting maybe 500 fossils a year, and that's shooting pretty high. And for a lot of the rare fossils, so the mammals, for example, if we had only been mining here, there's no way we would have ever found something like that. So the commercial quarry is, since they are doing such a huge quantity of fossils every year, they really find a lot of the more rare discoveries, which helps us get every little corner of the ecosystem and build a better picture.
We're able to go through a lot of rock. We are lucky here because we have a good relationship with the National Monument, with Arvid, who's phenomenal to work with.
Just something looks off. Well, based on how dense that is, I'd say that's reptilian. I came here for summertime jobs in college. Got introduced to digging fish out here and enjoyed it. And then I became the museum curator and served as the paleontologist for Fossil Butte National Monument. I live in Kemmerer. I like small town. I grew up in a small town. Kemmerer's been good to us as we raised our kids here, my wife and I. It's a nice community.
About 15 miles from Fossil Butte National Monument is the town of Kemmerer.
Kemmerer's an interesting town. It's famous for a few things. It was the mother store for J.C. Penney's. Kemmerer was also, and is still, famous for coal. I mean, they have these enormous coal mines.
Kemmerer is a surname of a German gentleman who funded the coal mining around this area.
When I came here, the city council would kind of laugh at me sometimes because I would say Kemmerer.
Kemmerer. So Kemmerer. We say Kemmerer. Just drop the last ER.
Kemmerer was a vibrant town. I mean, we had huge parades, people in the streets. It was an amazingly vibrant merchant class, and growing up with those people was just a wonderful experience.
We have some challenges, and it's really actually we're at a crossroads in many ways. Rocky Mountain Power has announced that they will be closing our power plants.
The businesses have disappeared. You have a hard time maintaining restaurants.
The town of Kemmerer was doing fine because there was 300 or 400 coal miners and lots of work going on. But they've got to find something different. A lot of the locals, the fossils goes right over their head, and they don't realize what they got in their backyard.
Arlie Craig, Peg Leg Craig, was the father of commercial fossils. Lost his leg in a mining accident out here in the coal mines in the early years. Peg Leg Craig kind of was limited to what he could do from that point on to make a living. He would take his wheelbarrow and his very primitive tools to dig these fossils and then prep them with a little penknife.
The railroad came through, and now you didn't have to haul fossils out of here on a horse or a pack mule or a wagon. There's a railroad.
And he would meet people at the train station and sell fossil fishes to people running either east or west and make a living, you know, up until he passed away in 1938, I think is when he finally died.
He was joined by the Haddenham family in the 1920s, who then went up into the 1950s collecting the fossils. And then the Ulrichs picked up in the late 50s and carried on. And then we have an explosion of quarry activity in the late 70s and into the 80s, with now there's over 20 households making sole source income off these fossils here.
My first year out here, of course, I met Carl Ulrich. And he brought commercial paleontology out of just the ma and pa shop type of thing in the 50s and 60s and 70s. Ulrich was the premier fossil fish person in the world.
My father was Carl Julius Ulrich, and he was born in 1925. My mother was born in 1926. And mother was a businesswoman, so they made a heck of a team. By 1960, that was the year that President Eisenhower chose one of the very large, beautiful diplomistas as the gift to Emperor Hirohito, the Emperor of Japan. There was a family discussion at the kitchen table one evening about, my mother brought up the question. She said, you know, Carl, do you really want to do this with what happened to your brothers? My dad lost two brothers. They were both killed by one Japanese Navy sinking the USS Houston, and then Leroy was killed by the Japanese. He was bayoneted at the camp called Kabunatan in Kemmerer in Wyoming. We sent a lot of young men there, and they were prisoners of war. They were terribly abused. Dad's response was very quick and eloquent. He said, I don't know if the emperor started the war, but I do know that he ended the war. Dad built a huge crate. Remember it going off and getting on the railroad and headed to the White House. The son of the emperor then went to the White House and received that gift and took it back to Japan.
And so from the President of the United States gifting a diplomistus to the Emperor of Japan that they had bought from Carl Ulrich, it was just really wonderful to watch that happen. And now we're the old timers. I remember when we were the youngsters. When I was doing it early on, there were only a few of us. The families that continued generation after generation of that family working in that.
The ones that have been doing this the longest, I'd have to say, is the Tinsky family. 3 generations of Tinskys were picking fish is what they called it. So they were, they started probably in the 60s.
My grandfather's name was Sylvester Tinsky. Everybody called him Swites. My dad and grandpa had a rock shop. I would go out with him when I was just a little boy, and I would help him hunt rocks and look for wood and stuff. Just basically rock hounds or fossil people. My job had just been digging and collecting and preparing fossil fish. That's what I've done for 40-some years. My dad got a quarry up here with the rancher, made a deal with him, and I started working with my dad. And then when my dad passed away, I pretty much took it over.
My wife and I moved here, bought my dad's business to help him because he was going through cancer.
It has changed a lot. When we first started, there was just a few of us doing it, and now there's quite a few people involved in it.
Are the different quarry businesses in town competitive with each other?
Oh yeah, they're pretty competitive, yeah. We get along. We don't really get together a lot. We just say hi and wave when we see each other. We try to get along, and it works out good for most of the time.
Dean's new kid on the block. And there's the up-and-coming new generation. Gotta happen.
Jim Tinsky is my father-in-law, and our company name is Instone Fossils. I started my career with oil and gas, and then I don't want to do what I'm doing anymore. I want to dig fossils until basically the day I die.
There we go. Check that out.
Winter falls across Wyoming. The ground is now too frozen to dig. This is the season for the fossil hunters to prepare their finds.
Good. They'll pick on that all day long. My name is Rick Hebden. My dad had to work hard for everything he did. No college. He didn't get even out of high school. I think of it, with my part especially, it was kind of a destiny. My father owned sheep, big sheep rancher. We used to have to go trail the sheep from the Kemmerer, the spring range, out to the desert. And it was about 2,500 head at that point. A pound of wool was I think $1 a pound way back then, which was equivalent to $10 when I was in the business, So it was a valuable commodity. In the late fall, November, we would trail out to the desert. And that was down by Little America, and just Flaming Gorge, all over that country. We could go anywhere we wanted to. We used to go to the springs, Warfield Springs, to get water for the sheep camps. I was dumping water into the cans, and I looked down and there was a fish. This is probably one of the first ones we found. And I could see that I could make a living at it.
Commercial quarriers like Rick Hebden make a living in part by selling important fossils they found to prestigious museums.
Field Museum in Chicago, they support commercial collecting. Their curator, he saw a win-win situation. He comes here, buys the stuff from us, takes it back to the museum, and they said describe it for years, literally. I've sold him a whole collection of birds, and I think there was 5 brand new birds in that collection. And they're still working on that pile of birds. And consequently, they've got the greatest collection of Green River fossils in the world.
When you have things as delicate as complete bird skeletons with all the feathers still attached, or complete bat skeletons, or flowers, or things like that are perfectly preserved, these things just sunk and were buried relatively quickly, or at least before they had a chance to decompose or be torn apart by scavengers. Fossil Lake is really a precious locality because, for one thing, it's the best picture we have of how North America was recovering after the great extinction at the end of the Cretaceous.
Southwest Wyoming is the Green River Basin, which is a huge, broad expanse. These were landscapes that, when they formed, were lakes in a subtropical or tropical climate. But today, it's a wind-blown, cold desert. The world is a very different place than it is today. For one thing, there was no polar ice caps. So there's natural, slow geologic processes that both increase greenhouse gases and cause the Earth to warm, and also remove those greenhouse gases and cause the Earth to cool. So we see in the past times when there was ice covering the entire planet, and times there were no ice at all. And those are purely natural processes, which meant that it was a warm world, and Wyoming was warm and wet. And in the Kemmerer lake beds, we find not only fish, but we find mammals and birds and reptiles, amphibians, and plants. It's sort of like Costa Rica. These lakes are a series of very large lakes that formed when mountain ranges pushed up and the area between the mountain ranges formed basins. They form in southwestern Wyoming, in northwestern Colorado, and then northeastern Utah. Basically, an organism has to die and then get buried in a place where the land is sinking. And you get buried under great depths of sediment, which eventually compacts into rock. And eventually, in some places, the sediment gets pushed back to the surface where it erodes, and the fossil effectively becomes unburied. So you have to die, get buried. In order to be found, you have to be unburied. Basically, that's your recipe. Quick death and quick burial is a good recipe to make a fossil. We're in the National Museum of Natural History, where we've got over 45 million fossils. So it's the largest collection of fossils in the world. Part of my job description is to go after these kinds of really rare, incredibly gorgeous things and make sure they're preserved forever. For a paleontologist, that state is paradise.
Each quarry offers something unique.
So we use them, incorporate them with backsplashes in homes, fossil murals as artwork for homes.
Some quarries focus on fossil tourism.
This right here are a bunch of tiny scales for fish from Anidia.
This used to be what was called the Outlaw Quarry. It was not a place that you would want to send your family. To get this going, we really wanted to have a place that was friendly for people, ladies, kids, whoever wanted to show up, and that enjoys fossils.
Nobody home.
I used to work here at the Quarry. I managed the public dig for the summer of 2012. I definitely met a lot of tourists. They don't know what to expect. There were a lot of people that were like, I don't know, they had no preconceived notions of what a quarry would look like, for sure. The questions they would say, like people would be like, fish, and they look around and they're like, what's a fish doing out, up here?
I'm happy we're going fossil digging this year.
Me too.
We let people come and dig, charge them a fee, and they get to keep the fossils. They can't get enough.
Opening up a new section of the quarry requires heavy equipment. Rick Hebden drives his backhoe across the top of the mountain, scraping away the dirt to get down to the rock. The road he is on didn't exist 2 hours ago.
You're looking down at a cliff, and you have to start pushing and let it drop over the edge. It gets a little hairy, Those rocks are trickling way down there. It's kind of scary from that seat. Hanging onto the seat, pushing that stuff right over the edge, and it's a long drop down there. Because you got to push right to the edge, It burns 100 gallons of fuel a day, and it hurts the pocketbook, So sometimes I have to let the money build up before I can spend it.
The best analogy is you take a cake and you slice a cake in half. You can see the layers in the cake. You know that there's layers there. And the layers themselves are horizontal features, but by slicing it, you see them in cross-section. And one of these little layers is called the 18-inch layer, because it's 18 inches thick, or maybe 20 inches thick, is a layer that has got a very dense kind of marl, and it's one where, for whatever reason, the fossils are better preserved there than they are elsewhere. It's sort of the sweet spot in Fossil Lake, where the very best and most beautiful fossils. The fossils there tend to have a nice dark brown, almost black color to them. There's just no debating that thing is an ancient fossil.
You guys ready to go?
We got some other rest. Yeah. All right. All right. I say we wager. It's $10 in the pot for everybody, and whoever catches the biggest fish, the biggest like end-to-end fish, wins the kitty. What do you guys say?
All right.
Sounds like a deal.
Sold.
We'll see how it goes.
So it was my grandpa's idea. He organized the whole thing. He just said that we would be coming out here and there would be fossils out here that were really famous area for finding fish.
Was always picking up rocks and finding arrowheads before it was illegal. Wish I knew more, kind of thing.
This is the stuff that I dig, okay? I'm giving you the stuff that I dig. We have some shims here, some hammers, so selectively grab what you need.
The tools have changed very little in a few hundred years. Wedges help peel the rocks apart and reveal the ancient life hidden in the stone.
Well, you just lift it up.
Go ahead. I think we can steal your thunder there.
Let's do it, Steele. Let's reveal what's in
Do
there.
it, do it. And you have a bunch of Nidia Eocena.
Oh, look at
Literally
that.
all over the place.
So we take a pick and we split each section of rock about in half. And then depending on the layer, if you get lucky or not, there's a couple fish fossils inside of each layer of rock. Yeah.
Every layer, there's just different things that could be on the rocks.
Okay. Take your shovels out, and we'll lift it. 3, 2, 1. There we go. And look at those fish right there. Oh. Oh my God! Look at that fish everywhere.
Is that enough?
That is freaking, that's a good one too, like seriously. That's awesome. That's awesome. That's a beautiful play. Yeah.
Fossils, it's like a mystery. You never know what's going to open up when you crack that rock open.
Some quarriers prefer to work in darkness.
We do it at night because, one, we can control the lighting, and two, it beats the heat of the day. That quarry out there, nothing shows up in the middle of the day. You can't see anything on it. Turn on the generator, got the lights all parked the way we want them, and man, stuff just sticks out everywhere. You got to see it to believe it, because what was absolutely nothing in the middle of the day, you come back at night, it's like, wow, that pad's got 100 fish on it, and coprolites, and everything that was there shows up. Here's a good one.
And you see this little line that's kind of a divot here?
Yeah.
This will be a plant. So plants leave impressions instead of bumps. So when you're looking for big plants or anything, you're looking for this sort of thing. And sometimes you can see them branching out or find palms that way.
We use lights at night to cast an accent shadow across, so that's how we discovered fossils. Really fragile, but we can save that one. That is pretty. First frisky of the night. Look at that frisky.
Oh, that's beautiful.
That's as pretty as they come.
Yeah.
I like it out there. We really enjoy to be there. It's hard, but it's real rewarding.
Oh, wow.
Wow. Wow.
So this exploded guy, that's an awesome fish. That's beautiful. Cha-ching!
Cha-ching.
Got that?
Yeah.
That's a myoplosis. Isn't that pretty? Shows up nice. Wholesale, because that's mostly what I do. Wholesale, that's like $1,000. Retail, you know, double that. Besides going, ouch. But you're like, whoa, we really kicked ass. We've got a lot of fish tonight, you know? It's like a gratification.
When I see those lights on the other quarries, I'm like, man, they found something good. I'm like, I want to know what they found. I want to see something crazy.
When diggers do find something rare, they have to involve the landowner and split the profits.
I'm Roland Lewis, and I'm 85 years old. My grandfather, Richard Henry Lewis, first came into the area here in 1870. He ranched it, he raised horses, he ran a bar in the town of Fossil. The quarries are on lease, and the quarry lease is based on a percentage of whether we sell prepared fossils or unprepared fossils.
There are a number of quarries that are located on the Lewis Ranch, and it's mainly these little outcroppings on the shelves that surround the area. So to date, there's probably 5 or 6 quarries that are on the Lewis Ranch, separate quarries.
Before the commercial private quarries, there wasn't a lot of species being identified. Since we've opened up the exploration with private, we found so many more species and types of species and such.
These amazing fossil discoveries have drawn academics and students to Kemmerer, where they do their field studies. They're developing a new understanding of the land through scientific methods. Professors use the quarries as a classroom, teaching their students about geology and paleontology.
How many quarries are you in?
I got 3.
Okay.
I've got Warfield Springs, I've got this one, which is private ground,
Uh-huh.
and then I've got the one on the state
Nice.
section, which we're going to this evening. They call these the sandwich beds because of these distinct ash layers. But the fish is actually stark. Can you see the dark line up at the top? Just a ½ inch above that. I take a measurement every time we find anything significant.
I think Rick is an artist.
Like I said, we'll cut them so that, see how that made him swimming up at a faster pace, right? If you put him straight across, he's just kind of floating along, blowing bubbles. He's not doing anything. You put him swimming downhill, he's seen something. He's on a mission, or he's trying to get away.
Not only is there science behind it, but there also really is creativity and art and his expertise.
I had no idea what a private fossil quarry would look like, honestly. I don't think I would have guessed that it was something like this, where you have folks from the National Monument coming out in addition to the academics, and academics from all over the country coming to see stuff. I wouldn't have guessed that, certainly.
We have got a half a dozen really cool, awesome mammals out here, and at least 2 or 3 of them is brand new species. So yeah, I've gotten 8 holotypes out of here, 5 paratypes.
A holotype is the first ever described of a new species, so they're really important.
Yeah. But it's got to go to a museum, and then part of the money's got to go to look for more stuff. All right. I got the backhoe fixed. All right, you guys want to dig? Yeah. Let's go over here, this side, and you can split some fish.
It's a great environment to bring students. I bring my University of Chicago class out there every summer.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
Wow.
Awesome.
That's where I do all of my field work. And the curators at the Field Museum and most major museums are research positions. One of the largest collections we acquired was from one of the quarriers, Rick Hebden, and it included an amazing amount of really unique specimens, including the earliest known mammal with a prehensile tail. That is, a tail where it's effectively a fifth limb. It could swing through the trees on this, and it's absolutely complete. And for early Eocene mammals, that's amazing.
And that little mammal with the prehensile tail, that's a totally undescribed little beast. And it came from people like me digging it out of the ground.
We want to see those collections preserved in perpetuity in an institution like the Field Museum.
There's a lot out there. You figure there's millions of years of fossils in there, but trying to find a good one and splitting the right layers is what we do. This is where I spend most of my time digging, is down here. You can see these. You never know what you're going to find when you're digging this stuff.
Fossil Lake is very well known for the fossil fishes. That's what we're known for worldwide. Millions have been excavated, literally millions have been excavated. As a result of those millions being excavated, the much less common things are found.
This is Jim Tinsky with his son and grandson at their fossil quarry on the Lewis Ranch. Less than a few hundred yards from here, Jim Tinsky was splitting rocks one morning in September 2003. Jim was about to make one of the greatest fossil discoveries to date in southwestern Wyoming.
Where'd you find the horse?
The horse was found up higher in the up above layers. It was late in the year. It was Scott Banna was working with me. And the first rock I split, I seen a leg sticking out. We got all excited and we split the rest of it and lifted it up, and we could see the horse laying there. Most fossils are in natural faults or cracks, and when you go to lift them, they break, and then you have to put them together. So this was unusual that the head was like a couple of inches from one edge of a crack, and the foot was like a couple inches from the other side. If it would have been laid out any different, a lot of it would have been missing. So we were very lucky. Most amazing day I've ever had. Finding a three-toed horse then was the ultimate.
What goes through your mind when you find something like that?
Oh my gosh.
I got a phone call from my dad, and I was so excited, I even brought tears to my eyes.
He called me and asked me, hey, I've got something really amazing in the ground. Yep. And he didn't tell me what he originally had found. He said, I got something really great in the ground.
We all piled in the Green River Stone Company truck and drove over to the back quarry, as we called it. We get out of the car and walk over, and there it is, a perfectly articulated horse just laying in the ground, and couldn't really believe what we were looking at. It was kind of a mystical feeling.
I received a phone call from my wife, and she said, hey, my dad found the horse. I'm like, no, that ain't real. No, that's the unicorn. That's the urban legend. That ain't gonna happen.
That's probably the holy grail, definitely, of mammals.
How does a horse get out in the middle of a lake? Well, this did. It's like hitting the lottery.
It was sitting in my house in the living room. Several years it was in here. I didn't know where else to keep it, you know.
As soon as you find a specimen like that, you'll start getting phone calls and people wanting to acquire it. And you kind of got to sit back and think about, okay, how important is this specimen? Let's contact the museums first. Let's see their reactions.
I wanted to see it go out to the monument, which, you know, I was hoping too, but they just never had the funds.
We would have had it here. And he was excited for that. Jim wanted it to come here so he could come here. He could bring his grandkids here and say, I found that.
There's a period of time that passes where, you know, people may approach you trying to buy something, and there's nothing wrong with listening to what they have to say. Also with the landowner as well. Then you make a decision moving forward on what needs to be done.
for finding something like that, that's like finding the big golden nugget. You know, you've worked your butt off your whole entire life to find something so magnificent. That's basically, like a lot of people say, is like your retirement.
Quarriers and landowners have been selling fossils to private buyers for centuries. Some paleontologists express concern that the institutions are being priced out of the market, with rare fossils lost to private collections.
A lot of academics are really against commercial collecting, and they make it their goal to try and make it tough for anybody else but them to deal with fossils.
The problem with commercial collection is not that commercial collectors are all rapacious and evil, or that they're, taking all the fossils forever. The problem is specifically that there is a limited supply. Vertebrate fossils are very rare. If the fossil is not in a museum, then it's not necessarily accessible, and that dead ends the science. And that's not how science is supposed to work. If the fossil is in a museum, then it's available for study in as close to perpetuity as we can guarantee. They should be the public trust. They shouldn't be subject to general ownership.
The concern about private ownership is illustrated by a recent case. In Montana, 2 dinosaurs were discovered that appear to have died while locked in battle. An extraordinary find. Thomas Lindgren was asked to help find a buyer for the dinosaurs. After several museums declined, the dueling dinosaurs were taken to an auction house.
My father branched out and started working with Bonhams and Butterfields, an auction house based out of Los Angeles on the high-end commercial market.
I took the dueling dinosaurs to Bonhams and offered the most important and most significant dinosaur fossil ever found in North America. And the scientists shot me down.
What we're trying to do is make the issue public with the auction houses and make as big a stink as we can, because fossils should be for everybody.
The aspect that these were commercially collected has created a little bit of a controversy in the scientific community. There are those scientists that believe unless they have had the opportunity to actually work on them themselves, they have no value.
One of the comments was made, all the fossils should be seized from that auction using eminent domain because they should belong to science. What?
In the United States at this time, there is no restrictions on private land fossils. They can be collected and held privately or sold or however, and they don't have to tell anybody.
So the United States is one of the few jurisdictions where it's legal to collect and export fossils.
Most other countries, what's under the surface belongs to the government. In America, it's private. If you own this block of ground and the mineral rights, it's all yours. So if you want to drill for oil, it's yours.
Many museums can't afford very many specimens, and if they're lucky enough, they might get a donor, but the donors don't necessarily have the same priorities for specimen acquisition that the curators do. And furthermore, the big auctioning market for big dinosaurs is driving black market fossil sales. We're not trying to ban sale of fossils altogether, but if it's scientifically significant, it should be in a museum.
In the end, the dueling dinosaurs did not sell at auction due to the outcry from scientists and the Society of Vertebrate Paleontologists. However, a museum in North Carolina purchased the fossils, a happy ending. Ever since then, as soon as a rare fossil is discovered, there is tension around whether it will be sold to a private buyer or end up at an institution.
Without the commercial investment, the dueling dinos would have never been found. They were found, they were collected by a private commercial company that did it in a manner of documentation and expertise that very few museums even have.
They're trying to rewrite all the regulations. So it is a constant battle to keep up with them and not let them stop you, from what we do.
A lot of people think people are getting rich over these things, and what they don't understand is the cost of doing business is actually quite large.
There's this balance there. The quarriers want to get them to museums, but they also need to pay their bills. And so this is their livelihood.
I call people wheelchair paleontologists, not to be disrespectful, but they don't get out of their damn chair in their office, and we're out here doing stuff, finding stuff, making stuff happen. So, yeah. The digging and collecting of fossils would slow down to a snail's pace if it wasn't for commercial people.
There's plenty of fossils for little kids and amateur collectors and commercial collectors and professional academic collectors. And there's plenty of stuff to go around. And I think it's one of these things of like, how do we learn to work together in this really positive ecosystem of paleontology? How do we try and get the really rare and important stuff into the hands of scientists and museums?
My only option is to work with people that either own the land or have the leases. But I'm fine with that because, again, we try and practice what we call citizen science.
We work with the Field House in Chicago. We work with the American Museum of Natural History. So we're really trying to get the fossils that deserve study. We're really, really trying to get those the attention they deserve.
We have about 400 specimens on exhibit. Of those, 26 were found inside the park on our land. The other 300 and some odd all came from outside the monument, out of these commercial fossil quarries.
Some people say that we don't know exactly what we're doing. We're uneducated. We don't have any formal education. People like me actually do care. We do care about the scientific value that goes into the specimen that we pull on the ground. We want to know this information. This is our love. This is our passion.
It's the relationships that you build with scientists that turns out for the benefit of science that will eventually change that outlook.
And Lance Grandy figured this out quickly along the game. You're not going to find the rare stuff unless you're digging the common stuff. Unless the fossil fish quarries are doing the work and selling the fossil fish, you're not going to find Tinsky's horse. As a museum paleontologist, we're always have our ear to the ground about when interesting fossils are found. I heard that somebody had found a whole perfect horse. And I bumped into Arvid Osa at a meeting in Seattle.
Hey, Arvid, is that horse still available? Yes, it is. Do you need contact information? Yes, I do. So I got him contact information.
I kept thinking, it would be pretty good to see Jimmy Tinsky's horse here in Washington, D.C.
I had several people interested in it, but I could never make a deal with them between me and the rancher and the people, just never could come to terms.
The Smithsonian, and that fella, he'd known none of it before, had seen it before, and then finally decided, well, it was something to pursue.
Kirk Johnson called me when we started working the deal about the Smithsonian getting it. He just said, we have got a couple donors. We're pretty sure that we can purchase this fossil.
It was an extraordinary day for Jimmy. I remember it fondly, it was like all his life work actually paid off. The day that he sold this horse, first thing he did is paid off his house.
I was living in the double-wide trailer here. After the horse, we were able to pay the house off. Me and my wife, we live a little bit more comfortably than what we would have. So right after that, it wasn't a year or two after that I came down with cancer. So, it was a good thing I was able to pay off a lot of bills and everything.
It was a great moment when the crate came here to the museum and we opened up the crate, and that was the first time I'd actually seen the fossil face to face. Tinsky's horse is sort of the Hope Diamond of the fossil world. It's an amazing fossil. And this is an exhibit which will see 5-6 million people a year, and every year it's different people. So in a decade, we'll see 50 or 60 million people in this room looking at that fossil. And that, to me, is a really great tribute to Jimmy Tinsky's tremendous good luck on that one day and his lifetime of collecting fossils and the fossils of Wyoming.
Kemmerer has been really good to us. Kemmerer is a great town to raise a family in. The coal mine pretty much kept everybody pretty much employed around here. They're worried about them closing down, so that's the whole thing, you know. What's going to happen to the economy of this town if that ever happens?
Kemmerer has been so tied to the mine for so long, and so the mine is what has provided a living for most of these people around here.
The town of Kemmerer is ground zero for a broader energy transition happening across the United States. Energy utilities are moving away from coal. Coal has been at the center of life for over a century in this Wyoming town. But the Kemmerer community is determined to remain strong.
It's just looking for another boom, and I don't know what type of boom it would take, you know.
In southwest Wyoming, plans from a company backed by Bill Gates to build a small nuclear power plant are now moving forward. Terra Power announced this week that Kemmerer, Wyoming will be the first location of the first nuclear power plant using its natrium technology. Now the plant will be built.
Yeah. Well, there's a nice little idea.
The only thing they could do better is promote more tourism to come and actually partake, you know, to dig in the quarry.
We need to do that a lot more because this is one of the premier fossil formations in the entire world.
Fossil Butte used to be just a wide spot in the road with a little trailer, and then they built the visitor center and it's expanded. It's kind of a destination now. It's really an awesome place.
I've set my ranch in a trust. It's to be maintained so these private quarries can still lease their quarries so it can continue in its present state.
I hope everybody can keep working and make a living and enjoy, you know, good lifestyle and enjoy, you know, what they love to do. I even go up now and work for my son now, you know, just to helps me a lot. And I love to dig fossils. I love digging the fossils. So when I'm not doing the treatment, I go up and dig for him.
My dad said it's like opening presents. You never know what you're going to get.
I started fossils like 3 years ago. I'm trying to be a football player, but if I don't make that, then fish. It's cool just splitting the rock and then finding what you see. Like, you might not find something on one time, but then on another time you might find like a whole set of things.
When I'm gone, it's up to the different generation then.
That's what I like about my job, making that discovery firsthand. I watch the children come in when I give them a fossil and their eyes light up. That's my inspiration right there.
I've always been really interested in science, even from a super young age. So I've had a lot of help getting here. And I really want to be able to share that to more little kids, especially little girls who are thinking about maybe being a paleontologist because they totally can.
I understand why fossils are so compelling. I mean, these are just these extinct monsters of the past. It's possible you can actually find them. Not all of them have been found. The best ones are still waiting to be found. And just to watch kids bombing around this room looking at this stuff, it's a true pleasure. This planet really does have a history, and the history informs its future and what happens next with people on planet Earth. And we're part of this story that includes mammoths and dinosaurs and Jimmy Tinsky's horse.
There's still crazy, wonderful things are yet to be found.
I love working with the fossils and the people that work with the fossils. That's fun. It's an ecosystem here preserved in rock. And then we have all these people that love them too, and it's a great community.
You know, I've been doing this for 40 years. Plus, I tell people I wish I'd have got into the business of selling feathers instead of rocks, because it's hard on your back. My knees are shot. I worry about the dust. The elements are brutal. And it's getting kind of old. It's, even though I still love it, when you pop open something nice, it's, you know, that little rush you get, and I'll never get over that. Never. When I was young, I did it every night. But after 40 years, it's like, yeah, we can quit early tonight. Is the bar still open?
Major funding for this program was provided by a memorial gift honoring Betty Buckingham Barrell, PhD, and her passion for the natural world and science education. The Wyoming Humanities Council, helping Wyoming take a closer look at life through the humanities. The Wyoming Cultural Trust Fund, Because Culture Matters, a program of the Wyoming Department of State Parks and Cultural Resources. A generous gift from MAS Revocable Trust. And the Wyoming Public Television Endowment.